Perfect. So today's just all about learning how to share, to create safe space so that we can empower and affirm those who we love to be brave when they come out to us as LGBTQ, and in that community. We invited in the in-person one for people to enter this space to write down some time that they've had to hide a part of themselves, even if it was just to avoid some sort of like minor uncomfortable situation. So as we start this, just think about that, because we'll talk about that in a little bit. And
so I am Anna Taylor-McCants. For about 2.5, 3 more weeks, I will be the pastoral intern at St. Mark Lutheran Church in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I am also queer and asexual.
My name is Elizabeth Friedman. I am the pastor at Light Lutheran Church and the Lutheran Campus Ministry at the University of Michigan. And I am heterosexual and cisgender, which means that I identify as the gender that I was assigned at birth. And I'm an ally.
And my dog Martin Luther joined us, but
Awesome.
I am Sarah Altenberg. I'm the minister of music at Trinity in Ann Arbor. I'm also currently doing my doctor of ministry at United in St. Paul, and I'm working, the whole project revolves around forming safe spaces. So that's something that's really, really important to me. So we have these 6 key terms that we felt like we should probably define before we started a little bit more deeper into this. So these things are things that sometimes get misused as in speech and just are important to kind of define. So do you want to do the first one, Anna?
Sure. So tolerance is a fair, objective, and permissive attitude toward those who basically have any type of difference or opinion from you. But affirmation is different. It's emotionally supporting, encouraging, and uplifting someone or something, even if that person is different or holds different views from yourself. So to be a safe space, we must move beyond tolerance to this affirmation and support, encouragement of a whole person.
And then I'll do this one. So all are welcome versus full inclusion. All Are Welcome is actually a hymn that we sing like in a lot of our congregations. But it's a common church ploy, I feel like, to almost grow our numbers, but it doesn't require us to do the work to create those safe spaces when we sing the hymn. So moving beyond that to inclusion, that's when we take the All Are Welcome to the next step and we actually back that concept up with our actions. So when we include a community, we affirm them. And that involves celebrating what makes people unique, and then providing ministries and events and things for people to support them. So it involves shifting our language, our practice, our policy, and our action. Do you want to do this one, Elizabeth?
Sure. So a dead name is when you use a name that's not someone's chosen name. So often this will occur when someone refers to a transgender person by their name assigned at birth. And it goes along with continuing to use a person's pronouns that they were assigned at birth and not the pronouns that they know belong to them. And this is really, really harmful, actually. So I know that it is, it's a source of a lot of anxiety and I think that the folks that I've worked with who are trans have wondered whether they're fully accepted by the people who love them the most, when those folks can't kind of get on board with their pronouns and their names. So the really important part about all of this is that those who are commonly dead named or referred to with inaccurate pronouns do have higher instances of depression and suicidal ideation and behaviors. And so using a person's name and their pronouns, which are the real ones, is actually a life-saving act.
And then the spectrums, we can probably all touch on this, but so this is from Reconciling Works, concept of the 4 spectrums that all of us are situated somewhere inside of. So there's sex, which you have female, intersex, male, There's gender identity, woman, genderqueer, man, gender expression, feminine, androgynous, masculine, and sexual orientation. You're attracted to men, bisexual or queer, attracted to women. And what's important to know about all this is even if you feel like you are 100% on the one end of a spectrum, you're probably not. You're at least 99.8 or 99.9. These spectrums span across a lot of different types of identities, presentations, expressions, and orientations. And so it's important to know that you're actually somewhere along the spectrum, just as someone who's more centered in the spectrum is along the spectrum. Anna, I know you had something to say about the intersex part, if you want to speak on that.
Oh yeah, I just think a lot of people don't actually know anything about intersex conditions. And so there's a lot of research online about them, but there's, depending on how doctors classify it, there's 15 to 30 or so intersex conditions, where sometimes your internal reproductive organs do not match your external genitalia. So some people will have a vagina and will have internal testicles, and so on and so forth. There's lots of ways that this can occur. And so instead of intersex, some people remember the word from the 90s, which was hermaphrodite. And so that word is no longer used to describe an intersex condition or intersex conditions as a whole, but there are types of intersex disorders where sometimes that word is like still scientifically appropriate, but I would still use intersex instead. And there's this book called Normal, and I wish that I had looked up the name of the author. But anyway, she talks a little bit about intersex disorders in her book, and that around the 90s, early 2000s, there was a psychiatrist or psychologist that kind of hypothesized that maybe 70% or so of transgender people actually have an intersex condition, because as much as it is about genitalia and reproductive organs, there are like brain components as well. And so for trans people, we just accept who they are. We don't need to do an entire scan of their body to like explain it away. And yet there very possibly is science behind people's gender identities.
You were talking about a brain scan, I think, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so there's there was a paper that came out, I think last year, and I could look that up, but it basically showed that the brain scans of cisgender men, that means men who still identify as male and they were assigned male at birth, that those brain scans match much more closely with trans men, or that trans men's brain scans match much more closely with cisgender men than they do with women. And the same goes for cisgender women and trans women, that from what we know about brains, and we all know that brains are still a lot of a mystery, that there's still a lot more research to do, but that we know that those brain scans actually are significantly more similar between transgender and cisgender males and females. And so gender is just a much more complex aspect of our humanity than I think a lot of us would like to think it is.
And I think going with that, you know, a lot of us think of these things in terms of binaries. So what these spectrums are trying to tell us are that there's not a binary for any of these. It's this flowing spectrum that everybody sits at a little bit different of a place on. So yeah, no binaries. So when we did this in a live format, we had some small groups and we talked about the question that I said earlier, you know, what part of yourself have you had to hide, even if it seems small. So we're just going to kind of go through a couple that we know of or we've heard. Obviously for me, I have had to hide my sexual orientation, or I've had to dress differently when going to a job interview because I was afraid of presenting how I typically present, because I didn't want to be overlooked for my qualifications if they were valid. So those are two that have applied to me, but I know there are some other really good ones that might be. close to what you're thinking. So
mine was, well, somewhat similar to yours, Sarah. Well, I said two different things, but one of them being, especially like my wife and I, we're a mixed race couple. And so not only do we have like the component of being physical in public because we are a same sex couple, but also because she is Black and I am white, there are certain places, you know, when we go home and visit my family in the South where like I'm sometimes looking around to see who's around. Does it look safe enough to be able to be affectionate with her? Do I walk, you know, close enough to her or whatever? Because it is, I mean, honestly, it's the same when we lived in Pennsylvania too. You know, it depended on what gas station we were going to, if we could, you know, goof off together or not. So it's everywhere, but there are certain places where we feel safer being together, and certain places where we feel less safe, you know, being publicly out together, because, you know, usually our kids are with us and you never know when someone is possibly going to be violent or to yell racial or homophobic slurs. So we are always conscious of that. And when we want to reveal ourselves. What about you, Elizabeth?
So for those who might be watching who identify as straight, and might not, to kind of create a point of empathy without minimizing any of those experiences. One of the things that I was thinking about is that, like, I've been on airplanes before, you know, in another life before the pandemic, but I've been on airplanes before and kind of hidden the fact that I'm a pastor, because if I get signals from the person next to me that they're not a safe person for me to tell, I don't want to spend the rest of the plane ride trying to defend why women should be allowed to be pastors. So I'll say I'm in nonprofit work, or I'll just kind of not talk about it, even though this is a massive part of my life and I'm really excited about this part of my life. Yeah. And, you know, I know other people who hide parts of themselves, and I think we do it without even thinking about it. You know, you think about what parts of yourselves you can't share with parts of your family, and how hard it is sometimes to hide those parts of yourself when you are excited about that being part of who you are, an integral part of who you are. So
yeah, I was thinking, I mean, I think it's just the root behind a lot of that stuff. It could be fear, like, you know, or sometimes you just don't want to deal with it, you know, like it's just for peace of mind. You have to keep something to yourself that is, you know, so important.
Like today's not the day I want to have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that all of us can relate to having to have done that. And then there's an added component when it's like literally your life partner and your, you know, or your whole like existence in the world, if it's your gender identity. You know, it's, yeah, there are ways that we can all connect on some level to the feelings behind that.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling that came out in our group was the physical feeling of that pit in your stomach.
Yeah.
So, and we've all had that feeling at some point, and just acknowledging and knowing that that pit that you felt over, if you're an ally, over any of these types of things, that's the pit that a queer person often feels when they have to come out in some way, shape, or form. So that physical feeling of, oh my gosh, this just doesn't feel good, that's present. And I think that's important to realize as allies. I think that's good for that one. Yeah. Misconceptions. So there's a lot of misconceptions. Do you guys want to popcorn these?
Sure.
You want to go first, Anna?
Sure. So bisexual people don't know who they are.
Oh no.
Number one. It's okay.
Let me get back to my sharing.
Oh, I can still see yours.
Oh, you can? Great.
So when a bisexual person is in a heteronormative presenting relationship, then a lot of times they are dismissed as being queer at all, or any part of the LGBT plus community. But they still very much fall under the LGBTQIA plus community umbrella and should be affirmed in their identity. But it's the same. There are a lot of times in the queer community, if a bisexual person is with someone of the same sex or the same gender, then it's like, oh, you're really not, you know, into whatever. Or sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of stigma, yeah, around dating someone who has, if you are someone who identifies strictly as a lesbian or strictly as a gay person, there's a lot of stigma around dating someone who has dated other genders as well. But bisexual people do know who they are, and they should be affirmed in who they are, no matter the person that they have fallen in love with or that they are just choosing to date at that time. It can be whatever the case may be. People get to tell you who they are. And Elle Dowd is a person who just graduated from the LSTC, the Lutheran School in Chicago. And she has some really amazing things on her website and on her Facebook about erasing bisexual identities. So check her out.
Cool. Misconception number 2, it's okay to be a silent supporter. So it's really important to realize, it sounds dramatic, but silence really actually is violence. When you're silent, it's almost like you affirm that someone who is queer should make their identity less or should tone down to appear cisgender or to make those cisgender or heterosexual people more comfortable on a daily basis. That's not okay. So I got permission to share this story, but I have a friend who is the new father of a baby girl who is beautiful. But his girlfriend is Black and he is white. And he went off on, like, he decided that he wanted to really become a big part in the Black Lives Matter equality, like just attempt for equality. And so he came to our house with a yard sign, and he said, I want you to put this in my yard, in your yard, for my daughter. And of course we're like, yeah, of course we're going to put a sign in your yard for your beautiful daughter. But it says white silence equals white consent. So this goes way beyond, I mean, like, obviously this is an LGBTQIA plus thing, but it just in general, it's never okay to be a silent supporter of like anything. When you're silent, you don't let those people who fall into the category that you're being silent know that you are a safe space. And it's just, that gets really dangerous. So I encourage you to be a loud supporter of whatever causes you are a supporter of. Do you want to do this one, Elizabeth?
Sure. Misconception number 3, that homophobia does not occur within the LGBTQIA community. We all learn some form of homophobia, whether it's through the TV we watch or from our family systems. And it is something that we all have to be unlearning. And again, to kind of create the point of empathy with any straight cisgender folks who might be listening, you know, you think about the images of women that are put out on in magazines and stuff, and how women have been taught to hate their bodies. You can't just flip that off, right? It doesn't just go away. And you look at yourself in the mirror and you wonder why you don't look like the models that you see. And I think that self-hatred runs deep, and we've talked about that a lot. It's the same, and it's something that we do all the time. We do it. We teach people to hate themselves in a lot of different ways, and this is just another one of those ways. And there are also, I will not probably be the right person to speak a lot about this, but there's also within the LGBTQ community, there's transphobia, and there are other ways in which people kind of stratify themselves based on sort of who is the most desirable within the community, just like we do all the time as a society in general.
And you found this awesome quote. Do you want to just, you Sure. can read that if you want. You found that. That was awesome.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend watching this special. It's called Nanette. It's on Netflix. You will want a box of Kleenex and maybe some ice cream to watch it, because she is very funny, but also you're gonna cry. At this one point, she says, 70% of the people who raised me, who loved me, whom I trusted, I believed that homosexuality was a sin, that homosexuals were heinous, subhuman pedophiles, 70%. And by the time I identified as being gay, it was too late. I was already homophobic. And you do not just get to flip a switch on that.
Yeah, that's a super powerful special. I remember when I thought I was sitting in to watch a comedy special, and then
right?
And then I was like, oh, this is like,
it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's really good though.
Anna, do you want to go through this one?
Sure. So misconception number 4, correction is an insult. Honestly, if someone corrects you because you have mispronounced their name or because you have used the wrong pronouns, it's not because they're trying to be right. It's probably because they want to continue in a life-giving relationship with you. If they thought that they were never going to see you or have to deal with you again, trust me, it's a lot easier when someone mispronounces your name to just like not say anything to them. But if you want to be in relationship with someone, it needs to be a safe, mutual place. So if someone is correcting you, it's usually because they're trying to get to that space with you so that they can continue in a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that too as a point of empathy as well. Like, think about how awkward it is if you've known somebody for like 6 months and they've been mispronouncing your name that whole time. Yeah. Like my maiden name, and I don't even know like a better way to say that, is Bacalier. It's Slovak, and like it's totally phonetic, but people would mispronounce it like crazy. And if I didn't correct them and I still like continued to be in relationship with them, how awkward is it to then say, actually, it's pronounced this way? And then they feel mortified that they haven't, so even more so with pronouns, I think.
For sure. And then misconception number 5 is you aren't allowed to feel upset. So if someone comes out to you, you are going to have a gut instinct reaction, and that is yours. So it's not wrong. Like you're allowed to feel upset, but where it gets dicey is how you react on that gut feeling. So it's natural to feel a ton of different emotions. And they are legitimate emotions because you're feeling them. They're not wrong, but you have to take your gut reaction out, and then you have to move through it. I wouldn't say move past it because sometimes it can be quite the journey, but you have to move through it to maintain your relationship. And then the most important part about this is the person that came out to you is not the person that you should be trying to process this with. So like, if my niece comes out to me and I am upset because of whatever reason, I'm not telling my niece that. I'm not processing that with her. I'm letting her do that on her own, or me do that on my own, and letting her have that moment of coming out to me and claiming that as her moment. And then the work has to be done on my part. So how we move forward. Who's reading this?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can go back and forth. Thus says the Lord, maintain justice and do what is right, for soon my salvation will come and my deliverance be revealed. Happy is the mortal who does this, the one who holds it fast, who keeps the Sabbath, not profaning it, and refrains from doing any evil. Do not let the foreigner join to the Lord say, the Lord will surely separate me from the Lord's people. And do not let the eunuch say, I am just a dry tree. For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose the things that please me and hold fast my covenant, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. And the foreigners who join themselves to the Lord, to minister to the Lord, to love the name of the Lord, and to be the Lord's servants, all who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it, and hold fast my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. Thus says the Lord God, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, I will gather others to them besides those already gathered.
And you had a pretty, I liked what you said the other day about, can you talk about this just for a second? It was that was good.
So often when we're talking about the Bible and the LGBTQ community, we end up on those few verses, kind of centering around those few verses that end up being used to tell people that they're wrong. And that is not what we're going to do today. Just a little plug. I think it's on November 18th. One of our students, who's a PhD student in anthropology and doing his dissertation on affirming churches, will be doing another one of these Zoom sessions, but it's a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock in November. So check your schedules for that. He will be doing a session on those verses and why they don't actually mean what we've been told that they mean. But much more often throughout the Bible, we see that that God is taking the people who have been cast out and bringing them back in to community, gathering the community, widening it all the time. And interestingly, so this passage is in the Revised Common Lectionary. It was there a few weeks ago, but we just like skipped over the verses about the eunuchs. Like the Revised Common Lectionary just like took them out. I put them back in and then I preached on it. But I think it's really important for us to recognize that it's not that those verses aren't there. It's just that sometimes we've taken them out because we don't want to talk about eunuchs, who are really the only sexual minority that is actually like truly mentioned in the Bible. And we can get further into why the word homosexual did not actually exist in the Bible before, I think, 1949. But eunuchs most certainly did. And this concept is, this passage is actually linked back to a passage in Deuteronomy that says that eunuchs, whether they wanted to become eunuchs or were forced to, which is horrific if you think about it, they were not allowed to be a part of the people of Israel. And here in Isaiah, God is saying, I'm going to break the rules to get you in. And like, these were the rules, but the rules don't matter anymore because I love you too much. And it's right there. It's thousands of years old. It's not like this is some new interpretation. It's there. And if we link this then also to the story of Philip and the eunuch, and the eunuch says, here's water, what is to prevent me from being baptized? And Philip baptizes him. He's both a foreigner and a eunuch, and is welcomed into the people of God and into the community of Christ with open arms, enthusiastically. It's not in spite of, it's because this is who you are and because you are beloved. And so I think there's a lot of work we can do around making sure that our theology is coming from a place of affirmation and not just saying, oh, we'll let you in anyway, but saying you are part of this community and we are really, really glad you're here.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. We thought it might be good to have some practical responses. So if someone comes out to you, there can be some things that we all want to speak to, like that's our natural reaction, but they might not always be the most healthy reaction for us or the person coming out to us. So this is just kind of a quick guide to what you can say instead. So the first one, instead of saying, are you sure? Like they probably know if they're coming out to you, they probably are pretty comfortable in the fact that they're taking that chance for a reason. So I would say it takes a brave person to be able to acknowledge that to themselves. Thank you so much for trusting me. You want to? Yeah.
Instead of, that must have been tough for your parents to hear, say, I hope you are coping well with the response of your family and friends, and I'm here if you need to talk.
Instead of, why didn't you tell me before? I wish I would have known. Say, I am so honored you chose me to come out to. Thank you for allowing yourself to be authentic with me in this moment.
instead of saying, I knew it, even if you might have thought, that's not a good thing to say. Give them the moment. Like, this is not your moment. It is the person coming out to you. That is their moment. Just say, thank you for trusting me to come out to.
Yeah, but then text your spouse or your partner about it later, because we do know, right? You know, like, but even in the queer community, like, don't say I knew it, you know, but people probably do come out to you because they know you're a safe person. You've come out before, you've lived your life as a queer person, generally you, not you, Sarah. But I mean, I know it's happened to me, and I've like, you know, text my spouse and like, oh my gosh, so-and-so, you know, just came out and like are living their life, but don't say it to them. Don't say you knew it to them.
Yeah, I like, because I feel like sometimes you really do have like a guess that person will probably come out at some point. But when you say I knew it to them, it almost like then that person's like, well, how'd you know? Like, what did I do that was so obvious that?
Right.
So
yeah. To be self-conscious about how they've acted before or after, but it's also just like having feelings and being normal. It's good and exciting to rejoice when someone comes out, and you can do that without making them self-conscious of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Instead of, but you seem so masculine or feminine or straight, say, I had no idea, but I'm grateful you came out to me.
Instead of, why not wait until later to come out? Say, I imagine it feels like there's never a perfect time to come out. Thank you for trusting me in this moment.
And then this one, so instead of saying something like, you know me, I love the sinner, hate the sin, just don't. I would say, remember, so this is more of a remember, not to say this, but so the LGBTQIA plus community doesn't always have a positive relationship with any faith or spiritual tradition. So it's better to steer clear completely of the knee-jerk religious responses and just respond out of personal love and gratitude that you hold for the individual. And then if it needs to go to a religious or spiritual place because the individual wants to take it there, that's okay. But the statements like I love the sinner, hate the sin are never helpful. And they can harm the person more than do good, even if your intent is to comfort them.
And you know, one other thing I think is important that we didn't put on here was like, it's really great and awesome to affirm people with the name that they've chosen. So this happens on Facebook a lot, right? And I see people sometimes commenting, well, you know, I don't love your lifestyle choice, but I love you, so great job or whatever. But that's half-hearted, it's hurtful. And instead, like, if you are going to use God language, like, oh my gosh, you are a beloved child of God, insert the name that they have chosen to live into. And if you are a person who is watching, who is a clergy person or whatever, maybe even approach them like, would you like to do an affirmation of baptism with your new name? You know, if this is a spiritually inclined person, there are ways to be supportive and uplift that, and to use God and how much God loves us and has created us and knows our innermost beings and affirms us without doing it in a way that's harmful.
I think one of the most powerful worship experiences I've ever had was watching an affirmation of baptism with someone using their newly claimed name. And I remember, like, as a queer person in the pews, just thinking, one, this church is a safe place. Like, that tells me now I know that. But two, like, I remember thinking, like, how cool for that human, like, that's just so awesome. Like, how can I find a moment like that where I can reclaim myself? Like, so I feel like offering that as a clergy person is huge, because it just, the feeling it gives for the individual to be able to reclaim that sense of identity in a sense of God's child, like, that's huge. But also for everybody in your pews who might be queer, being able to see, okay, that really is something this community is lifting up and loving. Like, that's a powerful thing. So remember, have grace for yourself. Know that you will make some mistakes along the way. We're human, like, none of us are perfect. And even the people, like, who are, like, I consider myself to be an LGBTQ activist. I mean, I'm doing a doctorate on LGBTQ safety and activism, and I still mess up all the time. So, like, you're going to make mistakes, and you have to have grace for yourself while you make them. But don't excuse yourself from treating someone poorly. Like, that's not excusable. Never process your feelings with the person who trusted you to come out to. There's clergy, there's therapists, there's best friends, there's spouses. There are so many people in your life that you can access to process information with, but you shouldn't process it with that person that came out to you. And then just actively listen, and you need to lead with love, which sounds simple, but I feel like it's something we all need to remember on like every aspect of life right now. So some resources. So there's a new LGBTQIA plus community group that is starting. I'm super excited about it. So it's definitely going to have faith leaning and spiritual leaning, like tones to it. So, but you don't, the person, like people in the group don't have to be super spiritual or faith-based to be a part of it. You just need to know that that's going to be a part of the group. So anybody is welcome in the LGBTQIA plus community. Any age is welcome too, but if we do have like high school aged youth join us, we will separate out into different age-based spaces at certain points so that everybody can kind of talk safely with people of their own age in that community. The first meeting is Thursday, October 22nd at 7. It's going to be on Zoom because of the pandemic right now. So if you want a link to that, please email me separately. I think we'll probably put our emails when we attach it to this, the sending of this recording. So anyway, yeah, it's going to be awesome. Somebody want to talk about this one?
PFLAG is the nation's largest family and ally organization supporting the LGBTQIA plus community. If you are a parent or a friend, they have so many resources about how to support a loved one in the process of coming out. You know, how to think about it, who to talk to. Know that you can also talk to your pastors. If you're in Ann Arbor, and especially if you're in any of our ELCA congregations, you have a pastor you can talk to. So, you know, you're not alone. And one of the things that I would liken this to is that because folks who are coming out have been processing this for such a long time, when you are the person who they're coming out to, if you didn't have an inkling before, it can feel like you're trying to get on a train that's already left the station. And you're trying to kind of like rethink how your child or loved one's life is going to look different from the way that you imagined it. But yeah, the most important thing, of course, is to know that you're supported, that your loved one is not alone either, and that the very best thing you can do is to lean into vocally showing how much you love them and support them.
PFLAG has some really awesome initiatives that they put out too, like things that they're going to do at Pride festivals in the summers, or just like different things they're going to do to help you be that presence for somebody else. So I definitely recommend checking them out because they always are doing something.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're always looking for volunteers too.
I'm sure. Do you want to talk about this one, Anna?
No, you go ahead and I'll talk about the last one because I think you put
Okay. So Reconciling Works is the Lutheran-based organization that advocates for full inclusion, welcome, and equity of LGBTQIA plus persons in the church. I had the immense privilege of working for them after my first time I was in seminary, and I can tell you from my experience, like the work they do has the best intent behind it. They really do work so that everybody can have their voices lifted up in the church. They have some really great resources on how to build inclusive churches. Like if you're a clergy person and you want to take your church to the next level, but you don't know how to start, they have these building inclusive church trainings that walk you through how to be a more inclusive space for people who identify as queer. And then they also just have personal resources. They have liturgy resources. There's a lot of good stuff on that website. So I definitely recommend checking them out.
I will say too, when I was at a BIC training and building an inclusive church training with another asexual person, this was right before I claimed that term for myself. The other person, they were sharing more with the director of Reconciling Works, and Reconciling Works went and learned more and immediately came out with information conversation about asexual identities and aromantic identities. It was just like, oh, we heard from someone in the community. Let's go figure this out and get this information out there for everyone else. And the same thing, this is their new logo, and I love it.
I do too.
It's beautiful. And the fact that it includes black and brown colors for the hearts just shows that they are listening to our community and the people who are advocating for all of those on the margin. So if you are an RIC congregation, but you don't have their new logo on your website, this would be a really good time to go get it and put the new thing up there.
Yeah, when I saw this, I like had so much just joy inside of I was like, oh, they get it. Like, that's awesome. All right.
Oh, we did not put anything. Did you put something about LDOUD up there?
I think it's next. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Great books. The Queerfully and Wonderfully Made is the newest one that just came out. Just look at them, read their reviews online. They're really awesome.
Yeah, Unclobber and God and the Gay Christian are kind of, I would say that you only really need to read one of them because they're both basically the same. They go through the same set of verses, and they, I mean, this is well established sort of exegesis, which is a fancy word for how we look at the Bible. But Colby Martin, they're from two different perspectives. So Colby Martin is an evangelical who is gay, and then scratch that. Colby Martin is an evangelical pastor who is straight. And as of the writing of the book, he doesn't actually know any gay people personally, or any folks within the LGBTQ community personally that he knows of. And so he is coming at it from the standpoint of that as a straight person who realizes that his church is actually not in the right theological place. He's realizing that his church is not the right place for him anymore, because he can't, as a straight person, continue to live in a church that is telling people that they're wrong. And that because we often say that like a certain church like is great if you're straight, but actually I would argue that it's not good for anybody to be in churches that are not affirming, because we are at the very least centering our community identity around othering people, and it's harmful for all of us. Matthew Vine's God and the Gay Christian is from the perspective of an evangelical person who is gay, and so he's working through a lot of the same things. So I would get one or the other based on which identity you think would resonate most with you. Transforming, I think everybody needs to read it, just kind of period. It's a beautiful book. The beginning is sort of like a primer on transgender terms and the ways that we talk about things, but the back side of the book, that section on Isaiah 56, there's a section on Philip and the eunuch. There are all of these ways of thinking about theology, and Austin Hartke really talks about how important it is for us to be moving forward in our theology and not constantly looking back and trying to apologize for who we are, but move forward and say, we are doing this because of our faith. And because of the God who loves us.
And then these are, yeah. You are still muted, Ann. Yeah.
That's okay. All right. I'm going to read a little bio about LDOUD real quick. LDOUD, she, her, hers, is a bi-furious pastor in training who preaches, writes, and teaches about God's desire to liberate us from the things we use to oppress each other. Cis heterosexism, racism, ableism, queerphobia, colonialism, misogyny, childism, capitalism, and white supremacy. So check her website out and check out her Facebook page if you have Facebook. I'm constantly learning from her about bisexual identities and everything else. She's a wonderful resource.
Yeah, and Austin Hartke, who wrote Transforming, has a channel as well with a lot of really good videos, a lot of quick explanations. They're pretty short on, what does it mean to be transgender? Can you be transgender and Christian? Can you be gay and Christian? And just a lot of really good explanations. And he is, I forgot to mention, a Lutheran Old Testament theologian.
Cool. So this was originally done for National Coming Out Day. So there was this prayer for National Coming Out Day found from Enfleshed, which is a resource for spiritual nourishment for collective liberation that Anna showed me and I love now. So thank you.
If you're a clergy person, it's worth it to pay the $8 a month to get their all of their liturgy materials and stuff, and their oh my gosh, what is the word I'm thinking of? Their exegesis on the text and all of that. So you should definitely sign up for their stuff. All right, do we want to rotate reading this?
Sure. Do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you to the queer and trans ancestors who left us histories to hold on to. Thank you to every kid who is the first in their class or their school or their town or their family, who made it a little easier for the next one. Thank you to the elders who fought for yourselves and for us.
Thank you to the ones who let your freak flag fly. Thank you to the ones who do queer in your own way. Thank you to the ones who take each other in. Thank you for kissing in public and holding hands in the street.
Thank you to the ones who share their scars. Thank you to the ones who hold space, no pressure. Thank you, loud ones. Thank you, quiet ones. Thank you to the ones who helped us learn to love our desire. No more shame.
Thank you to the ones who help us love our trans bodies. Thank you to you who are doing what you need to do to survive. We need you. Thank you for persisting. Thank you for proclaiming. Thank you for being.
To you who have shouldered the losses and taken the bullets and been fired, betrayed, beaten, bullied, or isolated. Your pain is honored. Your contribution is not forgotten. You deserve or deserved so much better. Thank you.
Once upon a time, they could say they didn't know us, but not anymore. Here we are, bringing our sacred strange into their pews and pulpits, to their dinner tables, and beside them in waiting rooms and checkout lines. No apologies. They are so lucky to have us here.
Thank you to you who are yet to come, who will expand our understanding and help us love more deeply ourselves and each other. Thank you to every queer beloved and trans love who keeps choosing to live and choosing to love and choosing to support each other.
And then we just have go in peace, be safe space.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.